After my parents passed away, the first thing I did was kick my younger brothers and sisters out of the house. I myself pretended to be homeless, staying on the side of the road, going everywhere to inquire about the enemy's whereabouts. But when I finally avenged my parents, my 4 younger brothers and sisters already hated me to the core. Before I died, my brothers and sisters, whom I had not seen for many years, once again gathered in front of my hospital bed. The second sister, Emily Brooks, spoke impatiently, "Is it written yet?" She didn't even want to say the word brother, because ever since she could remember, Emily Brooks had seen with her own eyes me taking me and my siblings to other people's houses, and often asking for her love. Because of her brother's evil behavior, she is always looked down upon by the business world. The third brother, Daniel Brooks, went back and forth, "Why isn't he dead yet?" Resisting law enforcement officers with a gun is really brave, unlike the second sister who is full of aristocratic temperament. Daniel Brooks is the Deputy Minister of Economics of Tehai City, with a gentle personality and majestic temperament. This T confronts this brother, Daniel Brooks despises and loathes himself. His limitless future has been praised many times by state media. Whether in terms of political achievements or development fields, he is considered the most outstanding minister of Dongchang Province. The only thing criticized is that there is a biological brother with evil crimes. Nurse Nancy looked at the 4 people in front of her without daring to raise her head. She spoke softly, "The patient's breathing is very weak right now. I'm afraid he won't last the next few days." Sophia Brooks, the 4th daughter of the Lamb family, frowned tightly, looked at me lying on the hospital bed, and said coldly, "If he dies, it's over. From now on, the Lamb family will be more open and brighter, with no more cowardly people." She has the most unique temperament among everyone. Although she is young and dresses simply, her identity is the most important. Sophia Brooks of the Institute of Advanced Scientific Research is the leader of Brain Engineering Project B. The department has repeatedly achieved major breakthroughs at the Alliance Forum. Very high status. And the 5th sister, Olivia Brooks, had a sad look on her face. "Miss 2, the brainwave device your group researched can probably be tested, right? Test it on him. I don't want to see his sinful life, I just want to see the appearance of his parents through his perspective." Olivia Brooks, the 5th daughter of the Lamb family, is 30 years old. She has an extremely outstanding appearance and is a new generation music star in the entertainment world. Thanks to the noble status of her siblings behind her, in the entertainment world, Olivia Brooks is also called Tian Hao. At this time, Olivia Brooks is no longer a confident person shining on stage, a bright and shining image. Her eyes were filled with tears. She dreams forever and wants to know what her parents are really like. What does it look like in the end? Why not leave a photo? Why be so cruel, giving them to a completely irresponsible person, a completely unworthy brother? The brainwave device is a new device developed by Sophia Brooks' team. Through connecting with the pituitary gland to extract memories, it is possible to enter the user's body when they were young, changing and experiencing their lives. Olivia Brooks, the 5th sister, wants to see her parents through the device from the perspective of her older brother who has never received love in his life. She really wants to see it once. The second sister, Emily Brooks, said coldly, "Arrange for the image of the brain wave device to be published all over the internet. I want to be Ethan Brooks when I was a child, and broadcast Ethan Brooks's original memories for comparison." She made a decision. The brainwave device will broadcast live at 8 p.m. on New Year's Eve, leading the audience and many people back to several decades ago. She wanted to show the audience what the eldest child should be like. And now, my life has entered its final phase. His chest heaved slightly, his consciousness was only a little hazy. I felt someone attaching a device to my head and heard the familiar voices of the children. I really wanted to open my eyes to look at them, but I didn't have the strength. I'm tired, pursed my lips. After decades, I have finally fulfilled my promise to my parents, trained my children to be talented, and brought the perpetrator to justice to protect my brothers and sisters. No one knows about my actions, nor does anyone understand me. But it's okay, I'm the eldest son in the family. I have to protect my younger siblings and protect them. After spending decades of my time, I finally did it. In a daze, the official brainwave device beeped. The brainwave research team officially launched the device. Emily Brooks entered my body when I was 12 years old, starting to experience my life. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw her parents wrapping dumplings. Just as she wanted to excitedly call her parents, she heard the sound of a car colliding with the gate, followed by angry cursing and a loud explosion. Before this scene of sheer violence, Emily Brooks was stunned. Lamb's father called her a few times and found that she was still in a daze. He could only hug her and flee from the back door, stuffing her inside the cornstalk. Emily Brooks spent all her time inside a cornstalk. Although she is a commercial genius, she is rarely exposed to such extreme scenes, in a moment of complete loss. Until the surrounding gradually became quiet, she trembled out of the cornstalk, walked around the main door, stepped on the broken roof to enter the yard. But when Emily Brooks saw the scene before her eyes, she immediately trembled and stood still, looking around in bewilderment. In the house, pots and dishes were broken, blankets were soaked in gasoline, and the fire broke out fiercely. The parents in the house were pale and kept vomiting. Lamb's father passed away and was stabbed in the chest. "Your face is black." Lamb's mother tried her last strength, crawled in front of her, and used her gradually cold hand to caress her. "You back, you are my brother, from now on don't cry anymore. You have to go back to your hometown to take care of your siblings. Don't avenge us. Live well, don't touch these people. They are all crazy. I am the eldest brother." Mr. Lamb coughed strongly. Thu Tao said because she was upset, every word she said was extremely difficult. Finally, her face became darker and darker, until she collapsed to the ground. At that time, S was still holding her hand tightly. Emily Brooks stood like a husband. She finally begins to recover her memories. She looked at the fire before her eyes and muttered, "I remember. That year, Ethan Brooks came to my grandmother's house to pick us up. He said that our parents went out and the house was on fire. It turned out that it wasn't because the house was on fire, but someone intentionally took revenge on our parents. But what Emily Brooks didn't understand was why I had to lie." Suddenly, she seemed to remember something. Her eyes were cold. "You're scared, right?" Emily Brooks screamed angrily. She frantically slapped herself in the face a few times, trying to force herself to calm down. Then, quickly knock on the neighbor's door. However, no one answered. The neighbors, out of fear and avoidance of involvement, did not open the door and did not care even though Emily Brooks kept knocking on the door. Outside town, stray dogs howled. In other towns, fireworks flew and pigs exploded loudly. Emily Brooks tiredly gave up knocking on doors. She looked at the closed door before her eyes with anger. Parents helped the villagers a lot, but now they are all cowards. Seeing that the villagers could not be trusted, Emily Brooks began riding her family's antique bicycle to the police station 8 kilometers away. Before leaving, she discovered that the tire was deflated. The heavy wheels moved forward through the mud on the road. She fell several times, but relying on her strong will, she continued to move forward. She finally reached the police station after an hour. Because it was night, there were only 2 old policemen on duty inside. When they heard about the case, their expressions changed and they quickly called the police station in the district. This is a mine. The location is so remote, it took a police car 3 hours to get there. This made Emily Brooks restless. On the road, it not only exhausted her patience but also exhausted her. This 12-year-old body completely couldn't bear it anymore, so he was tired of waiting at the police station. She borrowed the police phone, preparing to call her grandmother's house. Suddenly, Emily Brooks was stunned. What should I tell my grandmother and children? In this life, she is my identity. After thinking for a long time, she decided to tell the truth. Grandma, Grandpa, my parents have been harmed. Everyone, please come quickly, bring more people. Emily Brooks is extremely calm. She decided to use her commercial mindset to make things bigger. Surely we will quickly find out the truth. On the other end of the line, the children's cries and screams rang out. Emily Brooks feels like a mess. She didn't know if she did this step correctly, but at least she didn't choose to avoid it like me. She wants to quickly find out the truth about the person who harmed her parents. After that, as the eldest daughter, she took good care of and helped each of her younger siblings, her older brothers. Then, Emily Brooks calmly and firmly informed the veteran police officer, an expert in collecting fingerprints and footprints. She asked a large number of people to blockade and search, setting up roadblocks at each major traffic point. Open an investigation and offer a reward to the villagers who must collect physical and criminal evidence to be able to immediately arrest the enemy. These words made the veteran police officer praise him from the bottom of his heart. Think comprehensively, calmly and decisively, not like a 12-year-old child, deep feeling. The right Emily Brooks perspective. My life began to make an impression across the hall. That scene was like a movie with a dramatic plot, causing heated debate on the commentary screen. This is the image of an older brother. However, at the age of 12, in order to report to the police, walking for an hour on a muddy road, no matter how painful it was, quickly helped the police arrange a plan. As expected of Emily Brooks. I'm very curious to see Ethan Brooks's memories of facing the murder of his parents, with great despair. How will he make his choice? Why didn't he tell his grandmother's house and instead chose to hide it? Is this not the action of a coward? If Emily Brooks were the eldest daughter, the Lamb family would definitely be stronger. She has this spirit, no wonder she later became so successful in business. Amidst the sound of lewd discussion, the screen quickly began to play images of my memories, also at 8 p.m. on New Year's Eve. The old house of the Lamb family is plastered with couplets, filled with New Year's atmosphere. When I was 12 years old, I suddenly heard banging on the window and door. Father Lamb reacted extremely quickly pushed me under the bed, and then told me 1,000 times not to go out, no matter what happened until I was absolutely sure the enemy was gone. I suspect they are targeting your younger brother and sister. Their power is too strong. Hide carefully and don't cry. Father Lamb's voice was extremely worried. So my eyes red, crawled under the bed, trying to pinch the flesh as hard as I could to keep myself from panicking. Then I stared at the criminal, trying to memorize every feature. I saw my father being beaten, diligently recording every detail of the crime. At this time, Lamb's father was being stepped on by the criminal. Father asked, in the end, how much evidence did you discover? Since the 3 underground lines at our border were all destroyed, I give you a chance to S. Having finished speaking, he suddenly stepped on Lamb's father's ribs and broke them. Then, he turned his gaze. Evil eyes looked towards mother. Lamb drinks this bottle of pesticide, I will let your husband live. Lamb did not hesitate, opened the bottle cap, took a deep look at Father Lamb, and took a sip into her mouth. Then she continuously vomited, coughed, and her face turned pale. Father Lamb screamed until he was hoarse, but he was held tightly by someone else. He still wanted to resist until the perpetrator, expressionless, took out a doctor's knife, aimed at Father Lamb's heart, and stabbed hard. In the end, Father Lamb no longer resisted. He trembled, tilted his head and looked straight at me hiding under the bed, his eyes full of encouragement. Even before his death, he never showed anger or annoyance towards his children. From his eyes, I saw a sentence that continued, "Hide, you must hide well." I was stunned, tears flowed uncontrollably, but I did not have time to wipe my tears, but continued to observe the murderer's dress and appearance time and time again. Each of the four people's characteristics, such as height and appearance, were currently discussing the consequences in detail. Pouring into this person's mouth creates traces of conflict, disharmony between husband and wife, signs of both dying at the same time, leaving behind fake suicide notes and their notes in the rubble. It's a shame their children aren't here. If not, it would be different. The thug was extremely cruel. He forcefully held Father Lamb's head upright and roughly opened his mouth to pour in pesticide. After that, the thug quickly poured gasoline, left a will at the door, and lit a fire in the house. The fire flared up fiercely in the blink of an eye. I didn't rush out, but took off my sweater, ran to the kitchen, dipped the sweater in a bucket of cold water, then put my whole head in the sweater, trying to endure the billowing smoke. I hid under the bed again. This scene was extremely shocking. Some netizens couldn't help but comment, the reaction was too slow, he didn't even get out quickly, gasoline was all over the mattress, the old house could easily catch fire, at that point just the toxic smoke would be enough to kill someone. The reaction was too slow, he was scared silly. However, very quickly, then a new scene appeared in the house filled with thick smoke. There were footsteps again. The thug had a dirty head, covered his face, and searched the house. He kicked all sorts of things down and discovered there was no movement. He was satisfied and looked at the sea of fire and led his companions away. Following the roar of the old truck, the car began to move farther away. I just suddenly crawled out from under the bed. First, I didn't rush out of the house but used all my strength to drag my parents out into the yard. In the yard, Lamb's mother's face turned from blue to black. Bea looked at me one last time, with eyes full of vitality. "Don't cry. In the future, your parents are no more, you still have younger siblings, what will happen to them? From now on, you can't cry anymore. I investigate a criminal organization that is being retaliated against. In the future, you must find a way to keep the children away, don't let the criminals take revenge on them. To you back, what will you do in the future? I still haven't seen you get married." Speaking of this, Mr. Lamb no longer had any strength. She opened her mouth but couldn't make any sound. Gradually, the pupils began to dilate. In her last moments of life, she held my hand tightly. "You're the eldest brother, you have to grow up." Inside the house, flames rose sky-high, black smoke billowing. The surrounding neighbors heard the gunshots and all hid in their houses, not daring to go out. Without hesitation, I lifted my parents up little by little and moved. Because I was afraid of hurting them, moving was very difficult. Outside, firecrackers exploded in the sky, fireworks were brilliant. Some people are eating dumplings and watching New Year's Eve shows. As for me, it took me an hour to get my parents to hide in a pile of corn stalks behind the house. After hiding it, I don't cry anymore. Since my mother said I was an adult, I no longer shed tears. Just looking at their miserable scene, my hands trembled violently. After that, I rushed into the burning house again, found the chair that the girls used to beat my father, the bottle and the rolling pin. Take each item out and place it in an unnoticed corner of the yard." Seeing this, the line seemed to stop. The police officer on duty in the station also looked at the program and was stunned. What does he need that he has to hide so carefully? An old policeman squinted his eyes, saw something, and sighed. The Lamb family is not out for revenge, this is a purposeful revenge. The Lamb family's parents are not simple. As the first anti-drug police, they committed crimes against characters that anyone can guess. Therefore, Uncle Lamb probably intended to hide it well and tell the outside world that Mom and Dad were missing. Try to be patient with this or then secretly report it to the National Security Department. Having finished speaking, the old policeman couldn't help but sigh. This was the best way he could think of to protect himself and the children. Therefore, do not dare to report the case. The enemy is too strong. The Lamb family has 5 more children, but this time Ethan Brooks also considered a snake to compromise. But after that, I failed my parents' expectations, did not take good care of my children, and instead went down another path, doing evil things, leaving no stone unturned, causing trouble. This also made the old policeman feel regretful. Could this be self-abandonment? In despair, he fell even more. Very quickly, the scene changed. The Lamb family's old house was engulfed in a roaring, hot, fierce fire. I was alone, looking lonely, sitting in front of the main door, taking out a pen and paper, carefully writing something. At 8:20 p.m. on January 30th, the Lunar New Year program has just started broadcasting. The criminal drove a gray and white minivan, about 70 minutes old, and a black Santana, about 80 minutes old, straight into the main gate. About 6 people, the head is a person with a poke head, about 1m77 tall, on his right hand. Having a red scorpion tattoo, the second person threatened his mother to drink pesticide. Age about 25, long and straight hair, height about 1.73, wearing loose pants and a jacket. For other people could only see blurry images, including a thin, small person about 40 years old. The bald man, wearing glasses on his forehead, with a black mole on his left side, asked in a questioning voice, "Doctor, is it a 3-edged knife shaped like a dog's paw?" I began to use my eyes. My young face flashed with uncontrollable pain. Every time I remember my murdered parents, I feel extreme pain. That image makes people feel sad. In the hospital, Daniel Brooks, the third child of the Lamb family, with his majestic appearance, was stunned. He suddenly opened his mouth. Ethan Brooks is remembering those villains. What does he want to do? He had never heard me mention the murderer. In the impression of the 4 cousins, after the night of redundancy, I told my siblings that my parents had gone out and disappeared. The family's house caught fire suddenly. After that, they became orphans. One by one I took them away. Afterwards, my siblings also asked me about their parents' news. I never mentioned it, just said it was missing, not found. The female reporter in the hospital room hallway started talking with a dazed look on her face. Seeing his parents being harmed before his eyes, when he was a child, he had no time to be sad. He spent his time fighting fires, but to restore all the characteristics of the villain. This child has a very strong mental endurance. Commentators are also discussing heatedly, saying rationally, Emily Brooks's actions are correct. She did not hide, but faced and suffered with her family. This is a family. Having said this, the commentary suddenly stopped, because at this moment a new scene appeared on the screen. I was 12 years old, sitting on the doorstep, wearing a black cotton shirt covered with white snow. The house in front collapsed and a loud explosion rang out. Finally, surrounding neighbors also ran in fear and began to put out the fire. The old man passed by and kicked me a few times. "What are you screwing up? Why did the house burn like that?" I didn't react, I simply immersed myself in it, looking like a fool in the eyes of others. "Where are your parents?" Vaughn worriedly asked the 7 neighbors. "Why did your house burn?" "So I ask you, what are you doing here?" Mr. True was angry and kicked me. My eyes remained calm and distant, not answering. Before, no one came, but now they come again, starting to show off, asking east and west, busy with all kinds of things to show their previous dignity. Father Lamb helped eliminate the robbers here, like a miner moved to tears. Now, Mr. True likes to stand out, taking the lead in putting out fires as if he were doing a great good deed. Right now, I'm meticulously sketching. This is a criminal sketch, it's me lying under the bed. Through the image of the chest of the kettle being kicked over, we can see the general appearance of the perpetrator: black skin, red nose, long and narrow eyes with a black mark on each side, a cut eyebrow, and a knife scar on his neck. Every detail is fully recorded on yellowed paper. Then, as if in a daze, I walked to the pile of trash in the yard and started looking at the bloody hands on the rolling pin, the fingerprints on the pesticide bottle, and the wooden chairs used by the rioters. I began to depict the handprints of 4 other people, sketching out their shapes, clothing, posture, walking habits, outer and inner feet, and shoe patterns little by little. Every detail, like the thick sole prints, is all written down in this old yellow paper diary. The neighbors sighed and started to leave. Someone also called to inform my grandparents. I used trash to cover up, carefully hiding evidence with bloody fingerprints. Then the grandmother and her family arrived, bringing 4 siblings with them. Grandmother, 67 years old, saw her house burn down like this. She immediately burst into tears. "You back, where's your mother?" Grandma cried until she trembled. "Got out," they said before they had to go on a business trip. I calmly opened my mouth. I also hid the envelope that the rioter left behind. "Who burned the house?" Grandfather was so angry that he was shaking. Other residents also asked, "Yes, who did that? Did you play with fire and burn the house down?" I was about to open my mouth to explain, but in the crowd I saw a short, middle-aged bald man looking this way from afar. At this moment, I felt a cold breeze coming over me. "That's the warranty guy." So I sat down on the ground and said, "Sorry, I shouldn't play with fire, I shouldn't light candles in the house." The other neighbors got angry and kicked me a few more times. My grandparents were angry, holding sticks and wanting to break my legs. I didn't move, letting the stick fall on me. His eyes accidentally looked at a few criminals hidden in the crowd. Small, bald, middle-aged man, he stuffed something that looked taut to his room and belt. The man with the knife scar on his head, he squinted his eyes, like many others, looking as if nothing had happened. There was also a man with long flat hair who also seemed sorry and talked about the fire with others. The rioters were watching. I can't reveal that my brother and sister are still here. I can't let them target me. I have to protect my brother and sister. I repeated in my heart, reminding myself, and my voice echoed in the room, broadcast live, echoed into the night due to redundancy, throughout the country. 30 years later, young Officer Tran Hugh Van in the police station suddenly felt very uncomfortable at that moment. This child chose to shoulder the burden. Everything he knew, a murderer was waiting. He also knew that murderers had rules, so he deliberately said that he was the one who started the fire, taking all the blame on himself just to protect his family. It would be better to be known for burning down the house, being scolded for being unfilial and foolish. Having finished speaking, Tran Hugh Van suddenly looked towards his senior fake police officer. "It's really hard for me to imagine that Ethan Brooks' later life will be one of depravity and corruption, a frequent visitor to prison. Right now, he's very responsible." The old policeman sighed. But indeed, he later fell. Perhaps this disaster caused him to collapse in despair, eventually becoming a bad guy. At the scene of the fire 30 years ago, 6 murderers mixed into the crowd were not easily recognizable, but they all stared at the Lamb brothers, with sharp murderous intentions. They come to destroy the whole family, just waiting for the opportunity. 30 years later, today, someone finally asked in the comments, "Why didn't you call the police? Quickly let the police surround you." Very quickly, someone replied, "This was 30 years ago. Do you know how rampant crime was at that time?" The difficulty in finding evidence, especially in remote places like abandoned mines. It was winter, the roads were muddy, criminals were crowded with heavy weapons. Do you know how difficult it was to arrest? If pressed too hard, criminals could risk their lives. Lamb's family would really be destroyed. The situation is as desperate as it is. So, I don't dare to imagine what will happen next. I suddenly thought that Ethan Brooks would later be found to have bipolar depression and even have mental disorders. Did this childhood event stimulate him, causing him to change his personality and eventually fall into crime? If so, it's understandable. At that time, in the hospital room, I seemed to return to the old scenes. My face became fierce, even worried and uncomfortable. I frantically twisted my body. This memory is still like a nightmare. In the hospital room, Lambin frowned looking at the picture. So when we were children, we faced the risk of being destroyed? Is it possible? Why didn't I know? Sophia Brooks, the 4th sister of the Lamb family, was a little skeptical. Ethan Brooks was stupid. He just got scared and retreated. I'm curious. How did he handle it? Having finished speaking, she also looked appreciatively at the picture of second sister, Emily Brooks. Sister Hi came into my life. She quickly cooperated with the police, notifying other people in the Lamb family to cooperate. This is the smart and decisive way to do it. Indeed, Sister Hi is more powerful. Next, she can definitely lead the police to catch the murderer, helping the Lamb family escape from the darkness. Olivia Brooks, the 5th sister of the Lamb family, was absent-minded as if returning to her childhood. She constantly asked for information about her parents. I just hummed through the speakers. Looking back now, I was just cowardly and weak. Very soon, the simulated image of Emily Brooks continued to be broadcast over the town. The police finally arrived despite the falling snow. After Emily Brooks got into the car and faced the police's questions, she answered coherently. She detailed how her parents were harmed and each intersection was blocked. I suspect the offender intentionally took revenge on my parents, who are civil servants. Emily Brooks is extremely calm. She mentioned the arrest plan first, and also mentioned that she was a civil servant, in order to get the police's full attention. While speaking, the police began to look serious. They began calling to request reinforcements. The phone call rang out amidst the cold wind. Right now, Emily Brooks exudes an extraordinary style. Even though she used my body, she had the demeanor of a businessman who calmly commanded the whole process, without letting personal emotions interfere. After the police arrived and saw the house on fire, they rushed in many times but still couldn't see anything. The old police officer in the lead frowned and asked, "Mr. True, has there been a murder in the neighborhood here? Where did the murderer go?" Mr. True shook his head, his face full of doubt. "It's just a fire." "And haven't the Lamb family's parents gone to the district to get the goods?" "They've been gone for a long time, they're not at home. We tried to put out the fire, but if we couldn't save them, we went back to the room, there was no one." At this moment, Emily Brooks' confident face suddenly changed color. She realized a problem. During the time she left, the perpetrator not only destroyed evidence of the body at the scene but also used other methods to threaten neighboring residents. After just one night, all evidence disappeared. She remembered what her parents said: "The enemy is very strong, extremely strong. So tell her not to call the police." Now, Emily Brooks is starting to understand. The police once again conducted a search and investigation. They asked a few households, and finally determined it was just an accident caused by fire. Only the old policeman remains in town to coordinate the investigation. Other police officers left to pursue other cases. At this moment, Emily Brooks was extremely frightened. A little while later, Grandma and Grandpa arrived, and the younger brothers and sisters also arrived. Emily Brooks even saw herself as an innocent child, with many people around her watching the fire. At this moment, she was extremely desperate. After thinking for a long time, she still chose to deceive her grandparents. The family of 7 borrowed a neighbor's tractor, did not dare to take any property in the house, and only brought a little money and basic supplies to Lac Thursday district. On the tractor, Emily Brooks looked around at the rain. At this moment, she only felt enormous pressure coming. It is unknown who the real killer is. The evidence has been destroyed and he himself has been exposed. Before the perpetrator, Lam Tang's entire family fled aimlessly. Go to any house, avoid the killer. The boys and girls were all sobbing. They still have not accepted the truth about their parents' death. The 2 old people were also scared, looking around, looking at the scene before their eyes. Emily Brooks, with a sharp look, always repeats in her heart, "I must be resilient. My brothers and sisters still need me to take care of them." Very quickly, she returned to the market with a position always under control, but inside she was still worried and uneasy. At the same time, I am also very curious about what my original life is. Faced with the perpetrator, what should you do? How to solve? She thought I should run away, hide. Shy, did not tell anyone, hid the news of death. I will definitely choose to withdraw. But she chose to face it head-on. She doesn't feel like she did anything wrong. Emily Brooks muttered to herself. And at that moment, the picture of my life began to unfold. The fire in the Lam family's old house gradually subsided. I was kicked a few times by the old man, my body was covered in dirt. I was lying on the ground, looking like a wild child. The other neighbors heard that the children accidentally burned down the house, and their eyes full of contempt turned towards us one after another. The crowd gathered to watch excitedly. The heat quickly dispersed in the crowd, and there was an assassin with a poke head. The short, bald middle-aged man also stood and watched for a long time. He left with the crowd, in front of the ruins of the old house, leaving only 7 people in the Lam family, lying on the ground. Finally, I breathed a sigh of relief. The first act of pretending to be crazy has been completed. Finally escaped the assassin's tracking and pursuit. At this moment, I weakly collapsed on the ground. The boys and girls all looked at me with hateful eyes. He even looked at me with eyes full of resentment. Emily Brooks' younger sister, then only 11 years old, looked away with disgust. I've made my parents lose face. I burned down the old house. What should I do when my parents return? The 3rd younger brother, Lam Bin, is only 9 years old, his eyes are cold. From now on, we won't call you anymore. You're not worthy. The 4th sister, Sophia Brooks, was 6 years old, and she frankly didn't even look at me. A 5th sister, 1-year-old Olivia Brooks, is crying in her grandfather's arms. My grandparents were all angry, staring at me. Everyone said cruel things, but I laughed. Because my children are safe now, I don't pay attention to those hateful words and disdainful eyes. None of these things are important, it's okay. Grandma went to borrow a tractor to take the children back to their old house. Other siblings also followed. In front of the pile of rubble, I fell into memories. My ability to sketch, record crime information, control my emotions, these are things my parents taught me little by little. At that time, my mother said, "Eldest brother needs to learn many more things, later repay the fatherland and become an excellent person. What you have learned before, how to apply it in practice." But in the case of murdered parents, I felt extremely miserable. In my ears, my father's words rang out when I was young, "There is no way back, only forward." This is father's warm voice. At this time, I stood up, facing the dark night, muttering to myself, I must become strong and also strive on the path to glorify my family. In the bright night of life, we brothers on the day of our parents received great revenge. I, at 12 years old, repeated these words to my bones. My silhouette is alone under the night. The tractor waited for my brothers to go away. My grandfather, angry, forced me to jog home. There were no street lights along the road, only an old, dim flashlight accompanying me. The villagers were still talking and muttering that it was a natural disaster to give birth to a child like this. It would have been better to strangle him when he was young. Grandmother angrily complained in the car, saying, "Wait until I'm 13 years old and send me to the mines. This child consumes too much human energy, no one loves him, no one cares." Everyone agreed that I was a bad child. The moonlight gradually became faint. I sat weakly at the edge of the village without returning. At this time, I was extremely tired, lying on a pile of corn stalks to recover my strength. I was so hungry that I stole a frozen persimmon from the side of the road. I ate it until my whole mouth felt bitter, but I still tried to chew and swallow it because I had to replenish my stamina. Next, I'm going to do something big. I pulled the zipper of my bag tight. Inside contained the portrait sketch and fingerprints of the perpetrator, along with all the evidence such as the shoe sole pattern. In the backpack there were also weapons used by the perpetrator and saliva and blood carrying the DNA of the boys and girls. I had to let you guys leave, but I couldn't leave. He must take revenge. At this moment, his eyes were bloodshot, his body was stiff, carrying murderous intent. I put the evidence in the cart. After that, I took the blackened DHD from the old house and wiped the blade with force. This scene makes it hard to believe. The comments on the screen suddenly exploded, "Crazy. Why did he send you away just to take revenge? How can revenge be possible? Those are all reckless, cruel people, including in the hospital room." My third brother, Daniel Brooks, was also frowning. No wonder that day when the house burned down, he didn't come back. What did he plan to do? He absolutely did not believe that this brother, could take revenge. How could he have that courage? Image continues. I took advantage of the late night, started knocking on the windows of each house, deliberately making my voice shrill, and ran up the wall. The village chief called his son's name. The village chief's son, Tu Dong, 8 years old, innocently walked out, looking to see who was calling his name. After that, I applied the same method to each house, called the children's names, and made them come out. In a moment, the whole village was in commotion. Trung Hamlet's old third-generation Santana tire was also deflated by me. Finally, the village chief's loudspeaker rang out in panic, "Everyone, wake up, our village has been invaded by human traffickers." Loudspeakers echoed everywhere, and the loud barking of stray dogs continuously rang out. One family quickly opened the door. Village Chief Chu Kwong saw the car leaking air and immediately changed his expression. It wouldn't be strange if the car had gas stolen, but if it had a leak, it was clear that the other side didn't want to let him chase. Furthermore, every door was knocked on. Many children came out, almost being called away. In this era, human traffickers are very rampant, sometimes they even blatantly arrest people right in front of them. Therefore, the mining district town was in complete chaos. Every man in the family stepped out in panic, holding sticks in his hands. Consieda. Every family opens tractors and motorbikes. Most people were holding flashlights, some were holding torches. The village had nearly 400 people, a total of more than 100 middle-aged people gathered, panicking and discussing. And in the middle of the crowd, I cried, trembled, screamed. Tongue, the middle-aged and young people in the village became panicked and angry. No one wanted their children to be kidnapped. They went to the mountains to search and drove to find the village chief, waving their hands loudly and roaring angrily. The smart people in the village waved to each other and rode mill carts. Some people took their KD with them and went to the ground to stay in the village. The whole village is as bright as day on New Year's Eve. In front of the village chief's house, I looked at the chaos I had caused, showing no emotion. At this moment, the comment screen exploded. For a 12-year-old child to be so quick-witted, Ethan Brooks' tricks are terrifying. He knows he needs to harm the collective interests of the villagers in order to unite and mobilize. Only in this way can he have a chance to catch the perpetrator or scare the perpetrator away. Not only that, what's even crazier is that if it can be proven that the dealer is real, the surrounding villages, even the entire district, will panic. At that time, the perpetrator gang was forced to leave. He is also protecting others in the Lamb family. This child is only 12 years old. He only knows how to silently lead all situations, making things progress in the direction he wants. It's hard to imagine. Why did he resign himself to failure, while other siblings succeeded in their careers? At this time, in the hospital, fifth sister Olivia Brooks was suddenly surprised. My recollection made it hard for her to believe. Is this really me as a child? But in her memory, I dropped out of middle school and began to wander around in society, going everywhere making enemies, even sending all my younger brothers and sisters to other families. Even asking for money from other people's families. I have no feelings worth mentioning, even less responsibility. I only know how to run away. At that time, she felt lucky to be raised by another family. If not, then being raised by this kind of person is truly a sadness. So Olivia Brooks frowned. Is this really me? When I was 12 years old, I planned for the whole village to search the mountain. How could this be possible? Why then did I have no ability at all and achieved nothing? Olivia Brooks shook her head. The picture continues quickly. The police car arrived at Mo Town at 11 o'clock. Right now, I'm hiding in a straw, watching everything happen. The police began to register an investigation, and village heads of other villages also came. A lone police car parked in front of my village gate, scanning the surroundings. Women and children gathered waiting for news. The meeting took place at the village chief's house, and the police also attended. I calmly used a sharp object to hit the two corners of the car's windshield. Then, I suddenly kicked hard to unlock the car door. I learned the ignition technique from Lamb's father and quickly started the car. The engine roared loudly. When I was 10 years old, I often went to town with my father. I learned to drive a truck all afternoon, so I'm completely familiar with a manual transmission. When the police car started, the sound of the engine made many people startled. I drove straight up the mountain. A few policemen rushed out from the village chief's house. At this time, someone shouted, "It's over!" The traffickers drove away in the police car. They were definitely scared when they saw the police car, but there was a chance to steal the car and escape. Village Chief Chu Kwong felt scared. No wonder I couldn't find the traffickers when I searched all over the village. It turns out they were hiding well, waiting for a chance to take revenge or steal the car. Other village officials were also constantly stressed. This kind of cruel crime is rare. Regional Police Deputy Director Tun Hai Duong roared angrily. Call the department immediately. It's really crazy to the extreme. Send people to stop, block the roads at the checkpoints. We must definitely arrest this group of criminals and bring them to justice. The police are calling, other village officials are also calling continuously to inform. Young men in the village take action. Block off the roads and begin searching the mountains. Dozens of towns echoed with the sound of non-stop radio broadcasts. New Year's Eve became so bustling that absolutely no one could sleep anymore. Dogs in the village barked until their throats were hoarse. Children in all villages did not dare to sleep. Women and children gathered in groups, afraid that human traffickers would suddenly appear and kidnap children. From old to young, everyone carried a sickle or a singing knife, gathered based on the data of the large team dividing the area, and all went up the mountain to search for traces of human traffickers. Screams and barking dogs rang out non-stop. However, no one knows that a 12-year-old child is secretly controlling everything. Inside the hospital, third brother, Daniel Brooks, watched me consider the situation regarding the whole village catching thieves. He frowned and looked at the hospital bed. Because he resisted a law enforcement officer with a gun, I, whose life had already begun to count down, had an answer in his heart. That year I was only 12 years old. My mind had reached a level where I could plan the whole village. Suddenly encountering the news that my parents were murdered in front of me, I did not choose the police's help but took revenge myself by taking advantage of the police. Therefore, this was the beginning of my future path of crime. According to him, it seemed like my life had been predicted in advance. Meanwhile, at the police station, Tran Hu Van looked at the complicated screen and whispered, "Why don't you trust the police?" At that time I was only 12 years old, now I'm just like a child who just left elementary school. Can I really rely on my own strength to fight that kind of crime? He doesn't understand. The old policeman sighed when he heard it, looking at the image of the small child with sympathy. 30 years ago, in a remote place at the mine, the police force was still weak, especially when faced with an organized and pre-planned murder. The Lam family siblings were also targeted. Ethan Brooks is very smart. He used the name of the human traffickers, threatened the interests of the entire village, and joined forces to make a big deal. Only this way can the opponent be decisively forced to leave, or perhaps higher government forces will actually participate. But Dang became more and more curious, looking at the screen very quickly. New images begin. Police car speeding down the muddy road. In the middle of the mountain, I stepped on the gas pedal all the way. In the dark night, a roar rang out. The villagers are carrying torches and walking quickly on the mountain road at night. Seeing the police car speeding by, they raised their hands and waved. However, after they called loudly a few times, the car just drove past without stopping. Meanwhile, fire flared up elsewhere in the mountains and forests. A young man with flat hair opened a box of food and sat by the fire. He ate large pieces. The person next to him was also eating, over the fire. He just pulled out a photo. In the photo were the 5 children of the Lam family, smiling innocently and posing with their hands. He took out something. The doctor stabbed at the photo with anger. Destroying the Lam family's men and women is not enough to complete their mission. Next, destroying the entire family is their main mission. Looking at the Lam family photo, a dozen young men with dyed hair smiled coldly and muttered, "Shoot at dawn, destroy the whole family." He conveniently threw away the food box, and a surprised scream came from behind. "Someone's coming." At this moment, on the pitch-black mountain road, a police car with rotating lights was quickly approaching from behind. There was also a group of people carrying torches following. Especially the flashing police lights on the car became clearer and clearer. The leader took the lead and cursed, his eyes scanning everyone. "It's a cover-up story. Could it be that someone saw it at that time? Quickly call the information scout back." A moment later, not only the guy with the dirty hair but also the young man with dyed hair also looked terrible. They learned about the kidnapping through the villagers. "You really deserve to die," Sa appeared at this time. In an instant, the vehicles got closer and closer, along with the group of people holding torches, almost visible to the naked eye. Some people panicked, got upset, cursed, and split into two groups. Immediately get on the off-road vehicle and the van, retreating in two different directions. Police car lights and sirens drove through the dark mountains and forests. I remained calm and did not slow down. There were many silhouettes of people chasing behind. There were mountain people carrying guns and saw vans and off-road vehicles coming. It's becoming more and more certain that the car belongs to traffickers. Simultaneously, they opened fire and shot. The ferocious leader did not slow down and crashed two mountain people. The faster the car's speed, the two cars separated at the mountain road turn. I didn't hesitate and drove along in the van. The mountain road was bumpy, the steering wheel turned sharply, a loud noise rang out. The young man with shaggy hair suddenly opened fire. I rushed straight into the opponent's car. The opponent was thrown out of the car window, the car broke. I pressed hard on the accelerator, the car shot straight a few meters away, lying in the mud, groaning. Police sirens howled. The car did not dare to stop, running at high speed. At this point, I finally got off the bus. His expressionless face covered the straight-haired boy's eyes, dragging him into the car with difficulty. The car continued to move to the nearby cave. The hour is almost over, there are more villagers on the mountain at that time. I drove without emotion, coldly, completely unlike a 12-year-old child. Everyone in the hospital room looked at the image before their eyes and was surprised. In their impression, I was very cowardly and greedy. When facing them, you can only laugh to make money. Even though I'm angry, I'm just an angry person. At least they have never seen me with such killing intentions. But right before their eyes, I, at the age of 12, took advantage of the whole village police, drove a mountain road, fought to the death with guns, and captured a criminal with a gun. How does he look like a 12-year-old child? Olivia Brooks looked at this person in surprise. Is it really Lamangdeep? No way! The fourth sister, Sophia Brooks, was also a bit confused, and frowned. The me in front of my eyes is full of murderous intent, my face expressionless, calm as a machine. Completely different from the image of me as weak and greedy in their impression. Is it me? Image continues. The police car drove toward the cave. The car door closed, making a heavy noise. The young man with messy hair in the back seat was so beaten that he could barely open his eyes. I opened the car door, immediately used my shirt to cover the young man's head with flat hair, covered his arms and legs, and acted extremely skillfully. Sorry, I shouldn't hunt antelope. Please let me go, please. The young man with thick hair, pale face, screamed loudly, trying to pretend to be a poacher. I lowered my voice, stared at the young man with disheveled hair, and asked hoarsely, on January 30th, at 8:30 p.m., criminals drove a gray pickup truck, about 70 kilometers per hour. A black Santana, about 80 kilometers per hour. Just hitting the gate, 6 criminals, led by a man with a prickly head, went to the Lamb family's house to commit a crime. Someone threatened one of the victims to drink pesticide. About 25 years old, wearing jeans and a jacket, armed with a 3-pronged dagger. Who sent you? From the characteristics of the criminals to the weapons, each message makes young people more afraid. At this moment, the young man with flat hair clenched his teeth. Other than moaning, he refused to say anything. I'm shaking and also very scared. But I won't back down. In a bone-chilling mountain cave, I pushed the young man down and soaked his pants in water. The shirt covered his mouth and nose, causing cold to enter the young man's airways. The young man's hair was flat, he was struggling, his lungs were almost seriously damaged, and his ribs were torn. I let the other person scream, my hands kept moving. Finally, while I was going to get water, a young man started struggling and begging me. Tell me my name is Tran Dai Dung, from the inner city, 19 years old, belonging to the branch in the Dying border. It is responsible for eliminating a number of people. This time, hired by the bald boss Duong, 50,000 to kill the Lamb couple, 10,000 to kill the entire Lamb family. Nowadays, 10,000 Dong has great purchasing power. He brought 3 people with him. Boss Duong brought along a bald head, a total of 6 people. The bald man named Ma Dong, from the border area, belongs to a drug village. As for who Boss Duong is, Tran Dai Dung doesn't know. I only received orders to kill the Lamb family, I don't know anything about other things. Screams quickly rang out. I pulled out pen and paper, my face turned pale, tears welled up in my eyes. While taking notes, wiping tears, trying to endure sadness and despair. Collect all interrogation information. The image stopped in the city police station. Young police officer Tran Hu Van and veteran police officers were all staring. For a moment, both were stunned. The man was lying on a hospital bed, fighting off-duty officers with a gun. When he was young and had such courage and wisdom, Tran Hu Van exclaimed in surprise. His eyes fell on the person who was trying to endure the despair, on me, who was coldly recorded. I can't stay calm in my heart. Oh my God, this child did not choose to hide and bow but planned to take direct revenge. He not only wanted to use it to expel the enemy, but also memorize all the information about the enemy. Complexity and shock appeared in Tran Hu Van's eyes. A 13-year-old child, whose parents had just been killed right before his eyes, and his relatives abandoned and left me, could still think so calmly after facing a criminal. No matter how strong my mind and will are, the veteran police officers also feel that they are using me. It's just that compared to Tran Hu Van, he is a bit more suspicious, because he knows a little about such a person, but then he is always mediocre and has no achievements. After that, I always traveled everywhere transporting goods, without many scandals, and without a major criminal record. Only the year I, 42 years old, was suspected of murder and resisting law enforcement with a gun. Finally, he was shot down and taken to the hospital in a dying state. The old policeman became more and more incomprehensible. A 12-year-old person already has enough intelligence and the ability to make such comprehensive arrangements, why is life so normal after that? It can even be called rotten. In the hospital room, the 4th sister, Sophia Brooks, looked at me in surprise, lying on the hospital bed, extremely weak and bony. I was on a ventilator, looking very depressed. Her eyes were full of disbelief, standing on the spot, whispering to herself, "How is that possible?" The company drove to chase the murderer, fought for life and death, the detention cellar, completed the interrogation. That year I was only 12 years old. I was so good, Why after arriving in Lac Thursday City did each of my younger siblings, even me, wander on the streets, even being arrested one after another for stealing? Daniel Brooks clenched his fist. She didn't believe it.